The Untold Myths of Cagayan de Sulu. The island of Cagayan de Sulu had many stories, but none were feared more than the tale of the Burbalang, ghouls that walked like men but fed on human flesh, their eyes glowing like embers in the dark. The villagers knew the warnings well: if you hear the whispers, run. If you hear the moans, hide. And if the silence follows, pray. Marina never believed in those stories. Not until she heard the whispers. It started on a humid evening when she ventured into the jungle to collect firewood. The air was thick, the moon shrouded by heavy clouds. As she bent down to gather some sticks, she heard it, a low, wet moaning sound, distant but somehow inside her head. Her breath hitched. It felt wrong, like something was trying to trick her ears. Then the moaning grew softer, but closer. A chill ran down her spine. That was the sign. Marina turned to run, but the jungle around her seemed different, darker, twisted. The trees looked taller, their trunks shifting, their roots coiling like the limbs of something alive. The path back to the village was gone. Then the silence came. No insects. No wind. No sound at all. And then, it stepped out. A tall, thin figure, its arms too long, its neck crooked, its skin gray and stretched like dried leather. Its eyes, those cursed, glowing, slitted eyes, locked onto hers, unblinking. A wide grin spread across its face, revealing rows of needle-like teeth, yellow and dripping with something black. Marina stumbled back, her pulse hammering in her ears. Her grandmother's stories were true. The Burbalang had come for her. It took a step forward, but its feet never touched the ground. It hovered just inches above it, its entrails dangling, pulsing like living worms. It raised a clawed hand, its fingers ending in jagged, broken nails. And then it spoke. Its voice was inside her skull, 1,000 overlapping whispers, each mimicking the voices of the dead. "You smell sweet," Marina screamed. She turned and ran, crashing through the underbrush, her bare feet torn by thorns and jagged rocks. But no matter how fast she ran, the whispers were right behind her. Then she felt it, something cold brushing the back of her neck. She spun around, only to see nothing but blackness. The Burbalang had vanished. Or so she thought. A sickening drop of saliva fell onto her shoulder. Her body went rigid. Slowly, she looked up. The Burbalang was clinging to the treetops, its limbs twisted at impossible angles, its mouth stretched into an inhuman grin. Its jaw unhinged, and inside, rows upon rows of writhing tongues lashed hungrily at the air. It descended. Marina clawed at her waist, fumbling for the small knife she carried, a blade she had used earlier to cut calamansi for dinner. Her grandmother's words screamed in her mind: citrus. The only thing that can burn their cursed flesh. As the creature lunged, she slashed blindly. The blade tore across its face. A shriek, inhuman, deafening, filled with rage. The Burbalang reeled back, its flesh sizzling and bubbling where the juice had touched it. The jungle shook with its fury. Marina didn't wait. She bolted toward where she thought the village might be, ignoring the whispers that now turned into screams behind her. She burst into the clearing near her home just as the first rays of dawn broke through the trees. Only then did she dare look back. The Burbalang was gone, but the jungle still felt wrong, as if something was watching. Waiting. She stumbled into the village, gasping for breath, her limbs trembling from exhaustion. The first rays of dawn touched her skin, and she felt an overwhelming sense of relief. She had made it. As she collapsed near her grandmother's hut, the old woman rushed out. "Marina," she cried, kneeling beside her. I saw it," Marina panted. "The Burbalang. It almost had me." Her grandmother's face paled. She touched Marina's arms, then her face. And then, her grandmother's expression changed. She withdrew her hand slowly, staring at her fingers. They were smeared with something black and sticky. It wasn't mud. It wasn't blood. It was Burbalang bile. The old woman's eyes filled with horror. "No," she whispered. "You shouldn't be alive." A chill crawled down Marina's spine. "What?" Her grandmother gripped her by the shoulders, eyes wild. "The Burbalang doesn't leave its prey alive. It only lets them go when..." Her voice choked. "When what?" Marina demanded, fear rising. Then, a familiar sound. A low, wet moaning. Right behind her. Marina froze. Her grandmother screamed. She turned slowly, her breath hitching in her throat. There it was. But it wasn't hiding anymore. The Burbalang stood right behind her, its mouth grinning, its claws reaching, its eyes gleaming with triumph. And then Marina understood. She had never escaped. It had let her go. Because she wasn't Marina anymore. She gasped, her hands shaking, looking down at herself. Her nails were longer than before. Her arms thinner, paler, stretched. And her stomach, it churned with an unbearable hunger. A hunger she had never felt before. A hunger for flesh. Her grandmother backed away, weeping, chanting prayers under her breath. Marina tried to speak, but the voice that came out wasn't hers. It was 1,000 voices, whispering, laughing, moaning. And in the reflection of her grandmother's wide, terrified eyes, Marina saw her own face. Her lips peeled back in a grin too wide, revealing rows of jagged, blackened teeth. The Burbalang hadn't come to kill her. It had come to replace her. Her stomach twisted again. She was so hungry. And the old woman in front of her. She smelled so sweet. The end. Like and subscribe.